Brandon. We have two panelists joining me today. First, welcome Hazel.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here.
Yes. Are you excited to become a better you, Hazel?
Well, I think I am. You know, we used to ask each other what's the biggest room in the world, and it's the room for improvement.
That's good.
And so you can always do something better than before. And to cheer others up, that's a great way to improve.
All right. Hazel is always full of one-liners, and she writes a lot of skits. I think it just comes natural.
Well, there you go.
All right. We also have Pauline here today. Welcome, Pauline.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
All right. And what are we talking about exactly today? The title is about becoming a better you, but are we really talking about just ourselves?
Well, I think for today we have a couple different articles that we'll be covering over the next 2 days, all under this heading of becoming a better you. But especially for today, we're learning some tips for caring more about others and becoming a better person by, improving other people's lives.
Right. You got it. You hit the nail on the head. And so if you incorporate this advice into your life, maybe others will notice the difference, and maybe they will start to do the same. And so hopefully this encouragement will catch on. Well, today's topic, it says on page 22, 4 small ways to be an even more wonderful human instantly. Wow. Is it really going to happen that quickly? I don't know if I agree with that exactly.
Well, I sure hope so, but probably not, because we need to take some steps in order to improve, and sometimes we put things off. But these are simple ways, and so we could improve pretty quickly if we wanted to.
That's right. So, listeners, you can be thinking of some other ways outside of this that you can encourage people and just put a smile on people's faces. This is not an exhaustive list. It just gives us a start, and we'll add maybe some of our own so you can get additional ideas. Well, if you have your magazine, please open it up to page 22, and we'll just have our first reading for today.
4 small ways to be an even more wonderful human instantly. When I got home the other day, I found an envelope waiting for me. It gave me a little thrill of delight as I thought, who's sent me this lovely red envelope with gold stars on the back? I opened it up, and it was a note from a friend of mine congratulating me on the recent release of my book. It was totally unexpected and completely delightful. In a busy world where everyone is too rushed for everything, here are some small ways that you can be a more awesome human. 1. Rediscover snail mail. And not just for life's big events. Consider smaller occasions you can stick a stamp on and send love toward. Maybe someone lost their dog, and you want to express your condolences. Maybe a coworker did something brave, and you want to show appreciation or thanks. 2. Smile and dial. When was the last time you called someone to wish them a happy birthday, to get well, or to say thank you? Texts are great, but when someone picks up the phone, you hear their voice and can share a laugh or even a cry together, and it beats an emoji any day of the week.
Well, thank you, Pauline, for reading that for us.
No problem.
So we start off with, this is from Susie Moore. We hear from Susie quite often in advance, and she says, when I got home the other day, I found an envelope waiting for me. Now, if I see an envelope waiting for me, it's usually a bill or something like that. Not very exciting.
That's often the case, and usually you know right away it's a bill. We recognize that, but this was in a red envelope, so obviously it was something different.
All right. I don't think it's the red envelopes that we're accustomed to here around Chinese New Year, right? It's a little different than that, but it happens to be red.
That's right.
Right. I think at least, I'm not sure. I think it happens here in Asia too, but I know in the States, if you go to a card store and you buy cards, usually they'll have lots of different colorful envelopes that will fit the different cards. And that definitely will stick out, from the rest of your mail. That's usually just those long, white, boring pieces of mail that tell you it's either a bill or some junk mail advertisement.
But when's the last time you received a letter or a card in the mail?
I get letters in the mail all the time.
Wow.
But it's all from my mom.
Okay.
So that is a huge source of love and encouragement. And it's just all these little bright spots in my month. When I get a card, it still feels like a surprise every time. It feels special. And I try to remember to do the same. It's one of those family traditions I'm grateful for.
Well, that's what I was thinking. You do the same. So people you write to probably want to respond in a loving and caring way too.
But that is an unusual practice, right? I think if we did a survey, not many people would get handwritten letters. You're talking about handwritten, right? They're not typed up. Yeah. So I think that is not very common, but that's why it sticks out, right? And you're like, wow, this is awesome that someone took the time to do this.
That's what makes it special. Someone wrote it. And I don't know about you, but often if I do get a card, I might save it for years because it's just special and I kind of hate to give it away.
Yeah.
And hopefully they're the same. If you do take time to write a note, maybe someone will keep it and they'll have a good memory of you.
I notice that when I go home, my dad has like every card I've ever given him, I think, on his desk and all these different little nooks and crannies. And it is a reminder of just how important those little notes are. It just really shows that you took the moment to sit down and remember them, and they are special.
Right.
Well, I hope people save all my emails.
I save a lot of those too.
Well, there
Not
you go.
quite the same, though, is it?
It's not the same.
All right, so we see here that Susie Moore, she was delighted in this. She said, it gave me a little thrill of delight as I thought, who's send me this lovely red envelope with gold stars on the back? So she got all excited, similar to how Pauline gets when she gets those letters from her mom. And you know who they're coming from, but you still get excited. So she opened it up, right, Hazel? And then
That's right.
what was it?
It was a note. It was a note congratulating her. Apparently, she had written a book, and someone wanted to congratulate her on that her book was coming out. And she really enjoyed it because it was just totally unexpected. And she says it was delightful, totally delightful. So it really meant a lot to her to receive this handwritten note.
Yeah. And a lot of us would not take the time to do this. We learn next, of course, we live in a busy society. People would rather just send a text or an email. But if you take the time to actually write something, it shows a little more care, doesn't it, Pauline?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is just a lot more intentional. I was thinking about this situation where it's congratulations over, for her, it's this book release. I was thinking about my different friends who might have, I have a friend who's trying to pass a really important test for her work. And so I was thinking, oh, that's just a good reminder that when she passes it, there's a different level of affirmation of what a big deal it is. When you sit down and write a card, it shows that you are really giving it the weight of, of really sitting with it and recognizing this is something to really celebrate, as opposed to like, oh, hey, good job. Nicely done. That it feels a lot different. A little text that just takes, 30 seconds than a card that really doesn't take that much longer. It takes maybe 5 minutes, right? But there is a much weightierness about it that's very validating.
And I think this just brings up the whole idea of being intentional. Even with our words, we can decide to be intentional and say something that's more meaningful rather than the cliche things that we often say, right? And so you don't have to necessarily write a letter. That's one way, but there are other ways that we can show our care, or even buying something that we know that the person will love that shows like, hey, I'm thinking of you. Did you do it intentionally and not just take 5 seconds to do it? Can people see that you were thoughtful?
Is anyone else feeling guilty right now?
Yes, me.
Okay, because I seldom write letters, but I think
Yes.
it's a great idea to take a little time, write a letter, or do something special.
Yeah.
And we'll have some other ideas
Right.
too.
It doesn't have to be a letter. That's just one example. So number one ties in with this: rediscover snail mail. Now, we didn't have this term, I guess, many years ago before email, but now we have this term snail mail. And I think it kind of explains itself. But Pauline, just remind us.
Yeah,
of what
it's a
that is.
great phrase. I really like it. Of course, the idea is that a snail moves very slowly. So if you write somebody a letter, it's not going to instantaneously show up on their computer or in their cell phone. You're going to have to wait, actually, until you get it to the post office, and the post person sends it, across the ocean or just across the street, but wherever it's going.
Yes.
So it's going to take some time to arrive.
And living internationally brings new meaning to to this because it's even slower, right? It takes even more time. Sometimes it's amazing how long it can take, but it still gets there.
Then again, I will say, living in a world now where electronics are so ubiquitous and we're so accustomed to texts and emails, actually, I've said this before on the radio before, I find snail mail all the more miraculous. Like, I'm amazed by it because I'm not as amazed anymore as I should probably be. Just the idea that, these electronic stuff in the air is sending stuff out. But then when I think that I'm sitting down in Taiwan writing a card to my mom and it is going to go all the way across the ocean and arrive and it's going to end up in that mailbox that I grew up playing on that porch. I can see it, and it's like I'm here in tropical or subtropical Asia, and it's going to arrive at her porch in the snowy winter Montana weather, and she's going to grab that and open it up with her real hands and see what I physically wrote. That just is amazing to me. The more we get into a digital age, the more I'm amazed by the reality that physical thing will make it all the way from me to there.
Right. So we can write a letter, we can send a card. We see here, consider smaller occasions you can stick a stamp on and send love toward. Just meaning showing people you care.
Yeah, that's a great phrase. Consider occasions you can stick a stamp on. So that's kind of cute.
What are stamps?
What are stamps? Well, back when I used to mail letters, so of course stamps, the postage stamp that you put on a letter. So on occasion, you don't actually stick it to the occasion, but it's meaningful.
Right.
Your letter represents that occasion.
Yes.
So that's just a cute phrase, an occasion you can stick a stamp on and send love in that envelope. Because
Right. And we can also show sympathy through cards and letters because maybe someone lost a loved one. Maybe they even lost an animal or something like that. And here it says, Pauline, we can express our condolences.
Yeah, condolence just shows our sympathy, our care for somebody else's sadness. This is actually really good for me. I've been meaning to send a condolence card to a friend who lost his father. And it's been a month now and I haven't sent the card. And I was reminded that this is a good point that I think it's never too late to send a card to celebrate someone. I will still send that out. And I know that the reality is, even though it can feel like it's too late, that person is still struggling with that loss. That loss is still real in their life. So I am still going to sit down, write a card and say, no, this didn't happen today or just this week. The funeral's long past, but I am sure you're still holding this loss in your heart. And I just want to validate that I care and give my condolences. And I think those things can be really powerful in people's lives.
The fact that it's later than all the other condolences may be a good thing because, people send a note and then maybe they forget. But this will show that person that someone is still remembering and encourage them.
Yeah. So if any of you know someone who's gone through a loss, even if it feels like, oh, I should have sent a card, I forgot, or that would have been a good idea, you can still do it, even if it's been 6 months. If it's a real loss, people will appreciate knowing that somebody thought, hey, I know you're probably still hurting. I care.
Yeah. That's bigger than the embarrassment of sending it late or what you think of as being late. The same can go with sending a thank you note. You can still do that. Don't feel that it's too late.
Yeah, in some ways, I think it's all the more powerful. If you send a thank you right away, great. But if you wait 6 months and you say, hey, I just remembered again how much that meant to me. In some ways, I feel like it's almost more powerful because you're like, wow, they're still thinking about that 6 months later?
Can
Wow.
I hire you to write some letters?
Yeah, I know.
I
right?
love writing letters. I will
great.
say.
All right. Or maybe a coworker did something brave and you want to show your appreciation. I think the point is just, so oftentimes we have these thoughts or like, I really appreciate this person and they mean a lot to me, but we don't really go as far to say something, but we need to. Sometimes we wait until it's too late, or just much after the fact, and we could have just encouraged them much earlier. And so, let's be more intentional about saying thanks and telling people how much they mean to us. Well, the number 2, the next one is smile and dial. What are we talking about here, Hazel?
Well, it's hard to imagine, but a long time ago, you used to actually dial a phone. You couldn't tell Siri or your voice to call someone or contact someone. You couldn't just push a contact, but you actually used to dial a rotary phone to call someone.
I remember those.
You remember that? Yeah. So those millennials, I don't think they can
Not
do
many.
that.
I'm barely in the millennial.
But we still do use the word dial to
still
refer
do.
to
Sure.
making
Right.
a call, right?
To call
But you're
someone
right, it
or
goes
to
back
dial
those
someone,
days.
but that's where that word comes from, to dial. So, and it rhymes with smile, so it's nice. It fits together well. So smile and contact someone with your voice so that they can hear you. You know, it's interesting to me that we all have voices that sound differently. You can call someone that you haven't talked to in years, and when they say hello, it's like you know who it is. It's amazing. And so people love to hear your voice, and maybe you could actually call them. Some people don't like to make phone calls. I'm probably one of those, but other people love it, and they like to get calls.
Yeah.
Both this one and the one before has been making me think of when I was a kid. On birthdays, I remember getting really excited about it. Was the one time of the year that I would get cards addressed to me, because as a child, that was always my parents got cards. But on my birthday, my grandma, my grandpa, my uncle and aunts would send me cards, maybe with $1 or $2 in it. And I was so excited. And the other thing was I had one uncle and my grandma who lived far away who would always call us on our birthdays. And it was that same thing when you're little. You don't have, now I guess younger and younger people have their own phones, but at some point at young age, you don't have your own phone. And to get a call that was just for me to say they remembered my birthday, man, I have such sweet memories of that. It makes me think like, oh, are there any children in my lives? Children of my best friends, or as my sister's kids get a little older, I would like to continue that tradition.
Yes, being intentional, right? And it makes a bigger difference than we may know. Well, it does say texts are great. I'm not sure that I would say that. I think texting is convenient, but a lot is lost in translation. And the tone, you don't always know the tone, and it gets really confusing sometimes and frustrating, doesn't it?
It can. The reason I like text is because I don't want to bother someone.
Sure.
Occasionally, sometimes you'll call somebody and they can't talk right
Yeah.
then, or it's an inconvenient time. So sometimes I would rather send a text or an email, but there is something about hearing someone's voice. So texts can be complicated, but they are
I
convenient.
think it depends on the relationship and the situation.
That's true, too.
Because some people may be like, why are you calling me? You could have just texted. And then other people, no, they want to hear your voice, especially if it's a close friend or family member. So, give someone a call and encourage them, and maybe laugh with them, cry with them, whatever the situation calls for.
Yeah, and I appreciate that reminder to cry with someone. I mean, definitely once you might feel like, well, I mean, if I send a happy birthday text, they're going to understand the tone is pretty nice, But if somebody's going through something rough, and a lot of times I feel like, again, it depends on the relationship, but knowing that there's some people you can say over and over again, call me if you need anything, I'm here for you. But a lot of people, when they're in a really hard place, aren't still going to maybe be able to reach out, and you maybe need to be the one to make the call, not just say, you can call me anytime, but because they don't want to bother you, right? Because I think this goes both ways, right? They don't want to bother you. So I think sometimes there is a moment where you need to say, I'm going to call because I'm going to risk intruding a little bit just to make sure that they know I really mean it, and I want to hear you. If you want to cry on the phone, or if I can meet you and be there for you, I want to do that. So I think there's times for that.
And that can mean the world to someone, just showing that you care, right? And so I would encourage you to do that. Well, we've discussed points 1 and 2. 1 being rediscover snail mail. 2, smile and dial. We have 2 more points to discuss in our last reading. So stay tuned as we have our last reading and continue our discussion.
Three, ask someone their goals. Plus, give a little something. Asking someone about their goals for the year is a very generous act. This kind of question goes beyond a surface conversation and leads you to really get to know a person. Ask without an agenda, out of curiosity. And to be a real superhuman, give them something that might help them. A book, a connection, even just a few words of encouragement. 4. Share your blessings. I made a commitment earlier this year to give a little money every month to charity. I remind myself often of something that Anne Frank wrote. How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world.
What are your goals? It's coming to the end of 2018. We have one more month. Can you believe it? We often talk about goals. What about asking other people about their goals and maybe giving them some encouragement on that front? Hazel, do you ever ask people, what are your goals?
Not usually. If I do, it's usually at the end of December.
Yeah. Right.
And so this is November. This is probably a better time to ask people because they haven't really maybe started thinking about it yet, but it gives them a good reason to think about it. And if someone will share their goals with you, that's a good thing. It's a real bonding experience, I think.
Well, Susie Moore describes it as a generous act, Pauline. That's a interesting way of putting it, that it's generous to ask people about their goals.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting too, and I really liked it. And she goes on to say this kind of question goes beyond surface conversation and leads you to get to know a person. And I think that's the idea that there are, if you decide I'm going to ask somebody a very intentional question and I have the time and I'm showing I have the time and energy and interest to hear you and hear about your life and know you more, like there is a generosity about that, right? Because you're giving your time and your intention to be present to understand them more. And that is generous.
It goes beyond surface conversation. Surface conversation, in many ways, is the easiest kind of conversation. We would just say small talk. And that's good in some situations, but if it stays there, then the relationship doesn't really grow, and we need to go deeper with people, and this is one way to do that, Hazel.
That's right, to talk about something that's very meaningful. I like it says ask without an agenda. So sometimes we have something else on our mind, and that's a way we can bring up another topic or maybe our goals, right? Oh, what are your goals? Oh, well, hey, listen to my goals. You know?
That's so true.
So an agenda is we have something intentional that will help us, and that's the reason that we're asking. But just ask because you want to know, because you care about that person. You're curious about what their future holds.
Sure.
That was one of the first things I noticed about my future husband, Josh. Well, he's now my husband. At the time, I didn't know he was going to be. But I just remember being amazed at the kind of questions he would ask me and what the listener that he was. I remember telling my best friend, like, I keep just talking to him. I'm telling him all these things. I don't even know how it's coming. Like, I barely know him.
That's a good sign.
But he was such a good listener and asked such good questions and was clearly just was curious, wanted to get to know me. And that is very attractive and really can build some very deep bonds.
Yes. So be curious and be authentic, right? You really want to know about this person, not that you're just trying to appear that you're curious, but you genuinely want to get to know the person without having this hidden agenda, a secret reason for doing something, as Hazel was talking about. Well, and to be a real superhuman, give them something that might help them. What are some things that might help them, Hazel?
A book, perhaps, or a few words of encouragement. Just the fact that you're supporting them and you're behind them.
Yeah, this happened the other day. I had a conversation with someone, and a few days later, I think they were looking through their books and stuff, and they loaned me a book that was related to that conversation. And that does two things, at least. It shows that they care enough to try to help you out with something. And also, hopefully, the book will be helpful. And so just be thoughtful with your interactions.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is to be thoughtful and just consider if there's a way to help. There won't always be, and I think you have to be careful that you don't feel like you always have to have something, because
Right.
I think you can feel it when somebody almost becomes like a know-it-all thing, or always has the answer to like help your life get better. Like that can,
Be
it
annoying.
can tip the scale now to something that doesn't feel like really about you. It
true.
feels about like their ability to like, help you be something better. But, just to be thinking, and I like that, and some of it can just be encouragement, just being present and then saying like, wow, that's a great goal. Or let me know if there's any way that I can help you.
Yeah. Well, we can also just share a few words of encouragement. If you really appreciate someone, encourage them. Tell them that you're thankful for them and be specific in why they encourage you. Well, what is point number 4, Hazel?
Share your blessings. And we read that the author, Susan, made a commitment to help others. She decided to give a little money every month to charity. So she's been blessed by finances, and she decided to share some of that.
And we close with a quote from Anne Frank. And we have a photo there of Anne Frank on page 22. And what is Anne Frank known for, Pauline?
Well, Anne Frank is known for having died during the Holocaust. She was in hiding and eventually did end up in a camp and did not survive, which her diary did and has inspired a lot of people.
Yes, and what did she say here?
I love this quote. She says, "How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world."
Yeah, and it can be something small, right? An encouraging word, writing a card or a letter, just even smiling at people, something small like that. I mean, we don't stay there. You just start somewhere and move on. Now, Pauline, she talks also about giving to charity, and that is something we can also do and learn from her.
Yeah, I always love when I see this mentioned in these kind of things, that it's, that it's, if you have any kind of financial blessing at all, I think that giving is such an important thing to do, and then they're not telling you one specific place to do, it's just whatever's on your heart, and that you can start small there too, that even $5, $10 a month can make a difference. So think about things that will make you happy and excited about supporting, and give a little.
I think sometimes we think, well, what can I do? You can do something, right? And it may be something small. You have to start somewhere, even if it's just giving $1 away, and just build on that. Well, we are all out of time today, but we have more to talk about tomorrow. We will talk tomorrow about getting to the bottom of a bad attitude, and I think we can all relate to having a bad attitude from time to time. So we hope you will join us for day 2 of our lifestyle article. Until then, this is Brandon,
Hazel.
And Pauline.
saying goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.